Hi everyone, my name is Adriana. I'm one of the academic success coaches in the Testing and Tutoring Center. And one thing that I wanted to talk to you all about today, especially when it comes to just getting good grades, excelling academically, and really meeting all of your goals, is changing your habits. So I know a lot of times when it comes to how do we get good grades, we can start off with studying, spending more time reviewing the lecture notes and things like that, as well as looking for other resources in order to prepare us for our upcoming exam or writing that essay. And sometimes that can be a lot, especially when we have different factors that are going on in our lives, whether it's personal factors or just other commitments, whether we're working in a job or doing research or doing an internship. And sometimes that can be very overwhelming. So, as we've noticed over time, we may revert back to old habits where we are beating ourselves up for not putting more time in for other things, or really getting down on ourselves, especially if we feel like, well, we don't have time to socialize with friends because we're in school, and then it makes us feel bad. So, one thing that we wanted to talk to you all about today, and I just created this acronym, this idea of MAP. And what the acronym MAP stands for is continuing to have the motivation, changing your attitude, as well as persevering through all these difficult times, especially when it comes to undergrad, as well as graduate school. Essentially, the reason why we need to instill these different factors in order to change our habit is because when we motivate ourselves, it really helps us stay more grounded as well as remind ourselves why we're doing it. And a lot of times, in order to do that, especially when it comes to motivating ourselves to study or motivating ourselves to keep going, especially when we have those difficult semesters, is to really revert back or even remind ourselves why we're doing it, right? So, one thing that's really important, and we have to do it on a day to day basis, is to remind ourselves, well, why did we choose our major? Why did we decide to get our bachelor's, our master's, or doctorate degree in our area of study? And how is this going to help us in the long term? And sometimes, what I tend to do to kind of just remind myself why I'm doing it in order to motivate myself is to sit down, write out those goals, and also how you're going to envision yourself in those next 5 to 10 years. And a lot of times, why this is so helpful and beneficial is because it keeps us grounded as well as keeps us constantly reminding ourselves that there's a reason why we chose our major or there's a reason why we decided to do this. Because if we didn't, then we may have not been able to reach those goals that we really wanted to do before we decided to commit to undergraduate or a graduate degree. So it's always super important to motivate yourself as you're going through this process because it's not easy at all. But you also have to give yourself a pat on the back as well as you're going through this process, either through like small rewards, whether you like coffee, get yourself coffee, or even spending time with friends if you can, but reminding yourself that you're here for a reason. You want to get your bachelor's degree or one of your master's or doctorate degree. And in that acronym MAP, as I mentioned before, changing your attitude is so important because I know we will have semesters that are just irritating. They're just a lot of work, and sometimes we may have to do things that we really don't want to do, but we know it's required out of us. So, one thing that's important to change your attitude is to kind of surround yourself with people that are going to motivate you and support you. But not only that, leaning onto those professors or any staff members that are going to help you stay motivated as you're going through this process. Because there have been times, especially in my program in graduate school, where I felt like, okay, I'm not doing enough, or this sucks. Like I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. So what I've had to do for myself is to call my friends, especially those that are just encouraging and supportive, or even talking to my parents, because talking to a really good support system is going to help you stay motivated, but also leaning on to those professors that also see your potential as well is going to be helpful. But another way to change your attitude, especially if you start noticing a lot of those negative thoughts that are popping in, on a day-to-day basis is really catching them and then changing them immediately. So, for example, if you start telling yourself, well, I'm not good at math, or I know that I'm going to fail this exam, you want to catch that and then change it to, you know what, I'm not going to fail. I know enough and I can prepare myself before that exam to do better on this or to change my grade in this class. And this is something that you have to do on a daily basis, because if you stay set in this very rigid negative belief, it's going to affect you and you're not going to feel motivated to do work and you're not going to persevere as well. So perseverance. And this is all tying into this idea that college is difficult. It is difficult. It was never made to be easy, especially depending on your major. And you're doing this for a reason as well. So there may be those really challenging moments that really upsets us, but also makes us frustrated and feel like we're not putting in enough. And when you start noticing this, it's super important to persevere and just remind yourself, you know what, this shall pass, and I can do everything I can to keep myself motivated and moving forward. And this is on a constant thing. So, one thing that I've done to help me persevere, especially as I'm working on my dissertation right now, is to remind myself, well, why am I doing this? When I finish my dissertation, then what does that mean for me? That means that I graduate and get my doctorate degree. So you have to constantly remind yourself, well, what would happen if I do better on this in this class, or what would happen if I decide to take this research opportunity? And when you ask yourself those questions and just reflect on a day-to-day basis, it keeps you more motivated, changes your attitude, and then helps you keep on going, especially during these challenging times. So if you need any help, especially when it comes to this idea of MAP, fostering more positive growth mindset, or even needing help when it comes to any studying or test taking techniques, please feel free to make an appointment with the Academic Success Coach.